meeting for December 16th. Ms. Sheila, would Stacy like to do the roll call? I can certainly do it, Stacy, if you'd like to just record.
Okay, I can record.
Okay. Sheila Alameen Khashoggi.
Present.
Scottia Burrell.
Present.
Stacy Carlis.
Present.
Jeremy Roca.
Present.
Gerald Takano.
Present.
David Bland.
Present.
Sean Ingram.
Present.
Genevieve Sims.
Present.
Eb.
Present.
Deontay Thomas.
Present.
Johnny Thomas. Okay, Ms. Sheila, you certainly have quorum.
Thank you, Pam. Good evening, everyone. This is our final meeting for the year. We're going to start with the approval of the agenda. Have everyone looked over the agenda for December the 16th, 2020?
Move its approval.
Do I hear a second?
I second that approval.
Okay, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. The agenda has been approved. The third thing, the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, November the 18th, 2020. Have everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from last meeting? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Second has been moved. All in favor say aye.
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 Any questions?
I do have a quick question if y'all don't mind. I had a lady contact me directly through my Facebook, and she said that I guess something wasn't posted on the website and she wanted me to forward her the minutes. And I did. Is that allowed?
The minutes should have been on the web page, Pam, were they posted on the web page?
Yes.
I know there is a problem that the public is having problems even knowing where our meeting minutes and where to connect to us during our meeting. So if that can be clarified, where the public can reach our minutes and where they can also view our meetings.
And is it okay that I actually sent it to her? I'm just thinking about from my end, was it okay that I did send it to her? Because I was thinking it's public information. And I guess she was kind of getting upset that she couldn't find it. So I sent it, but I did want to ask, is that okay? Is that allowed of us to?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So I do have a question about that. What's the protocol in terms of having minutes posted before they have been approved?
Right.
Well, the minutes are posted. If you all have any additions or any edits that need to be made, those will it will be stated in the meeting and those changes will be made. And so you guys would typically say the minutes are approved with the edits.
Yeah, but my question is, if we have not seen the minutes, I'm not sure they ought to be posted. That's just my opinion.
Well, they are posted. You all will not have an opportunity to approve them until you get to the meeting. Now, the minutes get posted on the website as well. So are you saying that you haven't had a chance to see the minutes?
No. I'm just asking the protocol for the public seeing unapproved minutes?
So like tonight's minutes,
Right.
will they be posted before we get an opportunity to review them?
No.
No,
I
No,
think that's
no,
what you're
no.
asking, right,
Wait a minute,
David?
you just said they were.
Right.
no. That's a little confusing. Madam, may I hop in real quick?
Yes, please.
It's,
Let us please be in orderly to make sure we are raising our hands, please. So we can all not jump in at one time, but we can actually hear each other's questions and answers. Yes, Demetrius.
It's 1 month behind, so you're approving the minutes from the last meeting. So basically, when you approve these minutes, it will be posted for next month. And the agenda and everything is on your website. So if you just go to the website, everything is right there and everything is hyperlinked on the website. It's underlined with blue, so if you click on it, you can see the agenda, the meeting, minutes. You can see everything's right there on your website.
Scotty?
So if they are a month behind, then it would not be okay for us to email out minutes before they've been posted. So members of the public may not be able to see them because they haven't been posted, because they haven't been approved, because they're a month behind.
Correct.
Correct.
Deja?
Hi, so the way how board docs work, what you're talking about, the minutes go on a system called board docs. So when Stacy or Miss Sheila or whomever for the leadership team send it out to the group, once you guys receive the minutes from the previous meeting, I will then put them on board docs within the week of this meeting. So if you go on board docs and it will say view, you guys will approve the agendas from the past month, which was November. Any document that you're talking and discussing, the public has the right to have that same information, because if we were in a public setting, they will have to receive that as well. The official approval of the minutes are, if you go to board docs, it will say add minutes. And so that's the final minute. So it's kind of like 2 minutes. You have the draft, but then the final minutes is once you guys approve it, which is this meeting, then I will go back and add it to the official meeting. So I can talk to Ms. Pam, but maybe showing you guys how that will look. I know it's kind of confusing, but there's 2 sets of minutes for the same meeting. There's a draft that goes for the public, and there's also a final that's approved after this meeting that will go online too.
Greer?
Thank you. Just on your point regarding the public and regarding clarity, and this is, I guess, more so a question from the city side. I was just combing through social media and looking at what Raleigh city government tweeted out and put on Facebook in terms of meetings. And I didn't see that the Raleigh Police Advisory Board meetings were announced the day of. I think that's a way that the public engages. And so instead of having it rest on us to alert, family and friends in the community as to our meetings, could it be recommended to the city, whoever runs their social media, that they send out the link every Wednesday that we meet and post that on Facebook as they do their other committees?
Pam, can you answer that question for us?
Actually, Deja actually handles our all the postings, and so I think that would be a question that we would have for communications for the Raleigh City of Raleigh communications. So we can certainly inquire about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, did you have another question?
No, thank you.
Anyone else have another question about the minutes? Scotty?
So if we get notified by members of the community that information like this is not posted, instead of us sending out documents that we might have, because we get various drafts emailed to us, can we as a board agree to contact our contact through the Office of Equity and Inclusion to find out why it's not on the website and get that corrected instead of sending out a document? Because I wouldn't want us to send out a wrong draft or anything like that, or be sending out multiple drafts to the community. So can we agree to get to the appropriate person and get it posted to the website instead of sending out individual documents?
Anyone has a, I think that'd be, a excellent idea. If anyone, Sean, or anyone else have that problem, if you can send it out to the leadership team and they can get to, which is myself, Scotia, and also Stacy, and we can, contact Pam or Deja or both to make sure the minutes are going out properly.
Okay, thank you. Because I just want to make sure I'm doing it in the proper order, and I just didn't know exactly how it should be done. So thank you.
Okay, Deja.
Hi, and I'll also just give a point of reference regarding the publishing of the minutes. So in order to make it public, we have to have the agenda set. So typically, I will say there is a gap of time where if you guys don't set your agenda until 2 weeks after your meeting, that's when the minutes will get posted, because I can't just post it within itself, the draft that is within itself. So we have to have the agenda and the minutes in order to create the document to make it public. So that it might be, and then once you guys approve it and create the final draft, then that's when it will be.
Okay, anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay, we're gonna go back through the process of approving the minutes, previous minutes, November the 18th, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve again, November 18th, 2020 minutes?
A motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second it.
All that is in favor for the minutes be approved. Any questions? No more questions. All in favor of approving the minutes for November the 18th, 2020. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes for November the 18th has been approved. We will now go to the staff liaison report. Pam.
Yes, I don't have anything to report at this time. Thank you, Chair.
We will go to the chair report. You're welcome. I have several things that I wanted to update. One is on update on the policy request. I requested a policy, and the policy was 1109-21, special events and dignitary security. I have not yet, and also an invitation for a representative from Raleigh PD to come to our January meeting for some questions we had with our committee, which is Gerald, myself, and Deontay and Stacy. As of today, I do not have any answers on this policy. I did check with Pam several times about the policy, and she did come back and check, and there was still no answers. I also contacted attorney Ashby Ray to make sure the request had been given. He said he had passed it on to those that was in charge of it. Then I called Pam again, talked to Pam again. Well, emailed Pam again, and she checked on it again. Still no prevail of this policy being given to us for review, since we have already looked at the analysis, the consultant's report, and the chief's action report. So as of right now, we do not still have that particular policy. And we agreed last meeting that we were going to look at least 5 policies, and that was one of the policies we wanted to look at. And so I have not yet. I did go a little bit higher and ask the mayor to check into it for us, why it is delayed. I talked to Demetrius a little bit today, about what was taking place, why the process is so slow. So that is my report on about moving forward and how we can move forward. And we can't move forward because this board is about policy and reviewing Raleigh PD's policies. And that's one policy we requested and we have not gotten it yet. And this has been a 2 to 3 week process. And so that's my report on that particular policy. Ms. Genevieve, I see your hand up.
Ms. Sheila, I would like to ask you to explain one thing to me because I don't want to misunderstand what you said.
Okay.
Are you saying that you asked the Raleigh Police Department attorney to forward the policy on, or were you following up with him as to whether the policy had been forwarded? And then
I asked him, has the policy been forwarded to us? I mean, to the board.
And his response was?
His response was he had forwarded to those that is in charge of getting the policies for us.
Your request?
My request, yes.
Thank you.
Who is that? Who is responsible for getting it to us?
And Dimitri, according to Dimitri, right now they do not have anyone specific to for us to report. And the liaison, I did ask for one to come and represent the Raleigh Police Department. Greer.
Just to clarify, bouncing off of Ms. Sims, so we requested a policy a few weeks ago, a specific policy, so we could discuss it at this meeting, as well as requested a representative for our January meeting from the Raleigh Police Department, and have heard back nary on both requests.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sheila, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you were requesting that policy for the special committee for you all to review before you met, before our January. You had planned to have it before our meeting in January so you could discuss it with the full board.
Well, what I was gonna do, David, it was for the committee to look at, and then we was gonna pass it on to the full-blown committee so we can discuss it tonight, some of the policies.
Right. That's what I understood.
We were going to do.
That's what I had understood.
Yeah. Greer.
And just to clarify, the reason we were asking for a policy for the committee to then be brought before the board. And now when you ask the Raleigh Police Department about policies in general, they'll say, which is true, and Gerald may know more so than I do, but when looking at policy, their policies in general are posted online, but we were asking for a specific policy and for a representative, which is why it's concerning, at least to me, that we have heard back. We have not heard back, excuse me, on either account. And I don't know if there were more policies that we were looking at. That may be my ignorance. If we were looking at policies, if it would be helpful for any of us to look them up online, so we could just move forward and then just kind of tick this down as a lack of response from the department.
Well, Greer, that was one of the major policies. And Gerald is going to speak more about those policies in a few minutes. He's going to do the committee report. He's going to speak on that policy and certain policies. We did not identify other policies. There's one of the policies we was going to start tackling at this particular time. Any more questions before I turn it over to Gerald?
I guess I have one point of clarification. The point that Greer made is the policy that you requested posted on their website.
No, it's
no.
No, it's not. No, it's not. That's why we requested that particular policy, because it's not on their webpage. And what's going to happen in the committee, when the committee report comes, I want to give you all an understanding. Gerald will talk about that policy and a few other things. Then Deontay is going to talk about the governor's task force and their report, since You know, it just came out. We talked about it last meeting. So we're trying to make sure we line ourselves for what they're doing. Also, since this is policy, what we need to do as well. So that one policy was the one that we was requesting that's not online. So if
Right.
it's not, wait a minute. So if it's not any more questions, then we'll go to Gerald, but David has a question.
No, I said I got it. I understand the process now.
Okay. Gerald, oh, hold on. Greer?
Could you just remind us, and for those of us taking notes, what that policy was regarding, just in general, since it wasn't on the website? Was it had something to do with mass gatherings or something, if I'm remembering?
Special events and dignitary security, mass gatherings. Policy 1109-21. And I'm gonna let Gerald go ahead and start the committee report and what we are talking about. Gerald?
Okay, thank you. Again, just a quick synopsis of the subcommittee here that was brought together. We were to look at the original sources about the protests that occurred at the end of May into early June, and that was the after action recommendations from the Raleigh Police Department, May 30 to 31 of the 2020 protest. Also, we are given copies of the 21 CP Solutions November 2020 Consultants Report with 37 recommendations. And then the RPD After Action Report, Response to George Floyd Protests, May 30th through June 7th. And of course, then we have Sheila's analysis RPD protest report that was also done 2020. We were to look over those, and then all of you were kind of say, well, if you had concerns, if you had specific policies to pass on to the subcommittee, or if you just didn't realize if there was a policy, just what your concerns were. And we would try to match up the policies that matched up with your concerns, and then see where most of the concerns were overall. And so I have that for you, that summary result for you briefly. But in the meantime, what also has come out is another resource that you'll have to look for. It is also on the Raleigh Police Department page, which I will forward all to you, that report, which is the Raleigh Police response to the consultants' recommendations. So that's a several page report where all the consultants, 37 recommendations, the Raleigh Police Department memo to the chief, to the city manager, that documents what the police department's response was to each one of the responses and whether they agree with it, whether they're working on it or not. And that kind of mentions a number of different policies and actions that we think that we would probably be part of wanting to look at, review, and give recommendations to overall. And that came out on December 11th, which I will forward to the board and to the Office Equity Inclusion. Okay, so several of you did provide, send me some emails of your different concerns about the events and different reports from different reports and sources that we have. And the number one, the most common one, was the use of chemical agents, specifically tear gas. Was both Genevieve, David, Sheila, and Jeremy actually specifically listed that as one of their concerns about wanting to take a look at the Raleigh policies regarding the use of tear gas specifically, but in general covers all the chemical agents that are used for crowd control, crowd management. And so that was probably the most common one there, and mainly kind of covered all the areas of, what's the justification for use for the chemical agents, how much was used, reporting of each use or the lack of reporting of each use. Okay, the only thing that are in the reports are just the total numbers, like 252 canisters were deployed. RPD was just the numbers of it, and that came from the after action report, but they include all the other things such as justified use, injuries from, injury to officers from the use of it all, were they effective or not? And so that was a lot of questions regarding that particular area of policy. Now there are 5 different policies that kind of cover, or that the different parts of the policy covers that use of chemical agents. And the main, one of the main ones, of course, is 1109-21, which is the one that we request that's not available to the public or not posted on the website. 1108-1, which is use of force policy, which is posted. 1108-5, which is posted. 1101-9 is posted. 1106-9 is posted. 1107-2 all have little blurbs in there that kind of cover protests and crowd control, riots, that kind of thing there. And again, I will send forward the report summary so all 12 of you, so you can have the record of it and be able to look it up yourselves too. Yes, Greer.
Thank you. I just had a question on that and reading you mentioned, Gerald, the memo. And one of the responses, again, this is the memo from the police chief to the city manager and the assistant city manager, who is now the city manager. But it said that policy and procedure specifically dictate when such tear gas, deployment should occur. And in the case of the initial deployment on Sunday, May 31st, these were not followed properly. And so I'm wondering as a board, what our mindset is when we understand from the police department's own policy that the use of tear gas, which is banned in war, was not followed properly. If we wanted to have any say on that, or if there was any policy in looking at the 21CP recommendation that the Raleigh Police Department reevaluate their use of tear gas. I guess, I don't know if you know, to just help us understand what that means. How can we prevent this or do what we can to prevent this from occurring again?
Well, I don't disagree with the 21CP report on the recommendations of having a single consolidated policy that kind of covers it all. Because again, right now you have 5 policies and one of them covers who decides to authorize it, which would be a chief or designee or major or above type deal, but doesn't really explain what's the criteria that particular person is to authorize or not authorize use. Specifically, just as that particular person has it, then it jumps over to a different policy altogether about the organization, the groups, the training involved, the officers who are deploying it, which is slightly different. And you can sort of see when you have too many things to look at, from authorization to user to use to reporting to the training requirements to oversight to see if they're even expired, you run into a number of areas where you could have a breakdown in the policy working through. So yes, that all those policies together, it's one of the things that I think that's probably what the majority of the board would like to take a look at first and say, hey, how can we, put all this together, give recommendations to tighten it all up, all the way from who authorizes the use all the way down to who uses it, and then of course the reporting of it and the justification of it, so that that there is some good transparency going on.
Definitely. And I didn't by any means mean to interrupt, but I just did have some concerns, and I guess do have some concerns with the 21CP recommendation for the tear gas. Just because you mentioned the memo in the response to the 21CP report, just looking at some firsthand sources here, Dick Brown wrote that alternatives to tear gas would include officers' batons. And then this is in quotes, which creates a concern for optics and the impact of physical injury. And I just think that in the 21st century, especially in a city like Raleigh, we are in a position to push or recommend or use what resources we have to make it so that controlling at least what started as a nonviolent protest, controlling protesters, we're not left with the option of something banned in war and physical batons. I just feel like we certainly have more options than that, but that may be a separate conversation. So thank you.
It might be, because from what I understand too, there was actually specifically an exception for individual countries, individual countries to use it. So it's an unusual thing that in the United Nations or the international, it's banned for war purposes, but it's not banned for individual use by individual agencies, state agencies, so to speak. So yeah, that's a different topic probably, and it's worth debating, which also goes back into the philosophy of which the board's going to have to put forward. What's the philosophy that we would like to see the Raleigh Police Department have overall for its how to deal when protests no longer become lawful or peaceful protests, under what circumstances or criteria, what is the level, proportional level of response in order to manage a protest when you have elements within it that may become, non-peaceful. And for various reasons, from damage to property, to assaultive behavior, to assaults within it, to assaults on law enforcement officers, to escalate aggression, all those things are something that we've had to talk about as a group to say, well, what is it that we expect of the Raleigh Police Department or would like to have Raleigh Police Department as a professional response on the varying degrees of management that are predictable to manage or are predictable to predict are likely to occur, from completely peaceful to every variable outside of peaceful. So yeah, that's definitely a topic that has to be talked out thoroughly in the future, because it starts with a philosophy and then works its way down to what's.
David has a question.
Relative to that whole discussion, when I read the chief's report, it just seemed to me that she threw out that as a red herring to divert attention from the issue of the munitions.
Yeah,
My opinion.
yeah. At this time, right now, as far as what you would consider common or best practices at this time, is that there are very few options at the distance level that can be deployed for options for crowd management when you're trying to disperse a crowd that's been declared no longer a peaceful protest. There has to be, I guess, a research to look at what are the other options available that are available that don't include hands-on. You know, we'd like to avoid hands-on, I believe, at you know, as much as possible, because it just creates more danger to the officer and to the public.
Yes.
Or close quarters. So what types of other options do they have that can be used at various levels from so that individuals don't have to get within, well, touching range, and that's where things can quickly escalate, de-escalate, and decisions can turn poor very quickly on both sides.
Greer?
Just as we continue to have the discussion about tear gas, I do believe in September that Charlotte police made the decision, the city of Charlotte made the decision to not use tear gas during massive gatherings. And so it'd be interesting to look at maybe their rationale behind that, or for us to make a note and see if Charlotte has an advisory board and if they had anything to do with that. But I agree with you, Gerald. There's very little or limited options there. But I just, as we see, you know, between officers being unaware if the tear gas is expired or not, and some of the effects on those who may be nonviolent protesters that get in mixed in and have asthma and other conditions, I'm just not sure that, you know, when we review those policies that tear gas is the way to go there. So maybe taking some advice or some guidance from other municipalities similar to Raleigh in diversity and in numbers like Mecklenburg County would be interesting here, since I believe they banned it recently.
Yeah, that would be prudent.
And I just want to point out that even though recommendations was made by the consultant and some was already corrected, we want to make sure that the recommendation is just not on paper and they corrected their policy, but actually started training or doing training with the police officers, making sure that the training is they have a plan to start revamping or retraining the officers, because there were 36 or 37 recommendations, and some of them they said they had already started changing the policy. But we want to make sure that if they changed it on paper, that is also changed in their training as well. Anyone else have any more for Gerald? Gerald, you have anything else you want to add?
Yes,
Gerald,
okay. Go ahead, David.
I'd like to the email that I sent you all, it seems to me, one of the things that the consultant said was that there was a lack of knowledge about prior knowledge in terms of preparation for what was possibly going to happen. If we can address all of these policies that we want to, but if the Raleigh Police Department is not going to structure itself so that they have information and community interaction with the community, then all of these policies are just going to be what they are on paper. We have to have a basis of communication and understanding between the RPD and all communities, and we won't have this kind of confusion and inappropriate behavior.
Well, you're correct there. That is an issue. I should point out though, just so you guys may or may not know, that because we did have an abbreviated, training session, and I don't remember this being too much, but the Raleigh Police Department does actually have a state-of-the-art information center, which is staffed, I think, 24/7 by a number of different specially trained people who are specialists in database searches and all the type of background things. So if something happened, whether it was a riot or even just say a serious crime happened, and bits of information are coming in, these are specialists that actually take that information and run with it to develop it further. If they have a partial license plate tag, for example, they could actually start running multiple variations at the same time to get it. So that's the information center. They also have a separate specific intelligence unit that looks at all different kinds of threats and trying to look at potential threats and trying to mitigate potential threats so they don't become active threats. Now, those two particular units kind of work, have some overlap in tandem, but they're the type of units that would actually take a look at or did take a look at prior to the protests, all the different things going around, all around the country, everywhere else around the state, all that kind of stuff. Any known particular people who are known to have been, say, for example, have proven to be violent protesters in other protests in other parts of the country, they would check to see if any of those people are in this area in particular or have been traveling to this area, anything outside of that. But part of it all is, again, with a department that size is do they have the policy procedure in place that they can actually, that information gets timely and efficiently to people who are decision makers, who are organizing the operations plans, who are giving the briefings, who are assessing the risk overall, deciding what the rules of engagement are. It appears, that there are times where a lot of information that was probably there didn't get included other things that probably should have been. And again, that was mentioned into one of the concerns with the 21CP. And then, of course, David mentioned the other key factor is probably one of the weaker areas is the communication with the public, about potential things going on too. So yes, I agree with Dave. There's a number of factors going on there, but they do have some of the infrastructure to gather intelligence. Now, do they have the policies and procedures that inhibit the effective transmission of that intelligence to all those that need it in order to be able to do risk management properly?
Greer?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what David was saying earlier on what Mr. Bland was saying is that, yes, policy is one thing, but the mindset and the engagement and interaction that the Raleigh Police Department has with the community, which is one of our goals, one of our pillars as a board, is very important. Just for the public, I know we have people that are attending from the public and watching and may not be able to see the chat. I just dropped the link to the recent News and Observer article discussing tear gas and also documenting the back and forth between the 21CP consultant report and the Raleigh Police Department, mainly the police chief. And so this is just another example of what Mr. Bland was talking about, and body cameras has been a big deal here in Raleigh, dating back years. A few years ago, specifically with Sohiro Mojarrad and other cases of police-involved shootings that we've talked about here on the board. And so just pointing those who are maybe watching at home, or you all who I just sent the article to, it says in one point of the article that in the footage released in the 21CP report, several officers are heard making jokes about protesters, saying the comments, which many of you may have seen on the news, saying, as much as I love chasing people down on foot, it's so much more fun watching them run when we're in the Gator vehicle. And so then the 21CP solutions report indicated that during the one-on-one conversations, that these officers should turn their body cams off. And the response from the police department was, yes, we should do a better job of reminding our officers to deactivate their body-worn cameras when engaging in private conversations, even if they're in public spaces. So that's very concerning to me, that there's no condemnation on those types of remarks, but instead, they may have turned on the body cam at the wrong time. So that's what, I don't want to speak for anyone, but that's what I think when I think of mindset, when I think of community facing, when I think of justice, to say it's more fun to run these people down and to then have the response from those who are sworn to protect and serve us to say, well, they turned their body cams on and recorded the audio at the wrong time because that was a private conversation. No, the root of the cause is that was an inappropriate comment, and that those are the ways we're talking about these people who, even if they have a lapse in judgment and throw a rock, does that mean we should run them down violently? Those types of mindsets are concerning to me. And so that's where I see this board, when we make our statements and when we look at these consultants' reports, that really stood out to me. Is that's our response as a city, as someone who represents the police department, is yes, we should remind our officers to turn those cameras off during those times.
Well,
Yes,
obviously,
Yes, and it got publicized in the paper. That really made us look stupid.
it definitely doesn't look good when those types of things occur. I guess that the point I have to sort of say here is I would be surprised. And again, I'm not sure it's our position. We don't ask for it all. And also personnel records are kept non-public up until very serious things that are have to be reported publicly. And I would say that it is highly likely that anything that was deemed to be unprofessional in terms of language or comments, some of which that you kind of gave quote to, were likely to have been dealt with more than mere words, with some type of formal discipline, recognizing of unprofessional behavior and an appropriate level of discipline to discourage such behavior. Okay, again, as the public, we are only privy to when the discipline occurs at a very high level, in which the punishment is just short of termination with days off or demotion being included, in which the public has a right to know, or the departments have to report. But much less than that, from for lesser types of unprofessional behavior. Unfortunately, that's not public record. But just my experience with Raleigh is, I would be surprised if it was not addressed in a very appropriate manner with an appropriate level of discipline. How we might find out, I would not know. But I just want to kind of throw it out there that although the chief responded back to that particular thing, I don't believe she's allowed to discuss action taken specifically towards individual officer or individual personnel level itself. And I would, on my point of view, my experience, would I'd be surprised if it was not dealt with by more than just mere words, personally. So let me go on. So that's actually just the most common one, was those policies related to use of chemical agents. Other parts of the board member also were concerned or had questions about our mass arrest policies, whether they are up to speed and need to be reviewed or revised. Then there's a mutual aid policy. Now, again, all of these also can be combined as part of the overall larger policy, which the 21 CP recommended. But these are other areas, other policies besides the ones I mentioned as far as related to gas itself. So mass arrest, mutual aid, body cameras already came up. The body cam policy. Also, that's what we're looking at. Not just do they have the policy, is the policy reasonable, but are they training the policy? The fact that you mentioned that what reasonable person would purposely record themselves saying something clearly inappropriate, right? That could be more where you might have a policy where it says, don't do this, don't say things, or don't understand if things recorded, but they're finding examples of officers saying inappropriate things when they believe that they're in private space. Okay, tells you that may not be a policy error, it also may be a training error, that they need more training on the policy, not just read the policy, acknowledge it, but also are they training the policy to where it's predictable? That if you train something and you see the results of training, then what's it give you? Predictability that a behavior is going to happen or a unapproved behavior is not going to happen. So when you have a legislative behavior that we say we don't want to happens, but it says here in policy don't do it, but it's happening, then almost always it's either going to be a training issue or it's going to be a supervisory issue of the policy. We want to make sure that one or both of those are too within the policy and the oversight of policy too. So that was, body camera came up. Again, policy confusion was a big part of it, where some officers thought they couldn't turn it on, even when the elements of the protest turned violent. They still didn't turn them on because they thought the policy, they misread the policy saying that we don't turn it on protests. Well, I said, no, you don't turn it on peaceful protests, but you turn them on when you have obviously laws being broken to document it and be able to show that, hey, what you're doing is reasonable. There's a question about policy relating to some of the tools, the 40 millimeter soft projectiles that were used. I think 257 of those were deployed. Okay, again, we don't know why they were deployed. Was it justified to deploy each one of those things? Under what circumstances? Under different areas? And that'll be a different part of the policy we want to look at. Is it sufficient? Again, that's going to be under 1109.21.2, which we don't have access to at this time, which covers the 40 millimeter soft projectiles. Again, Jeremy brought up incident reporting. The amount and the clarity and the detail of the various types of munitions used, force used, justifications. It didn't appear to him to be very thorough and very specific, okay, to cover what I call reasonably what he believed to be reasonable documentation of the different types of things used by the Raleigh Police Department throughout the different protests. And of course, incident reporting is also covered under a number of different policies from 1108-1, 1108-5, 1109-9, and the 1109-21 all deal with reporting, of different types of reporting. And then we have, as we mentioned earlier by David and some others, the intelligence, the amount of intelligence that was gathered, the type of intelligence gathered prior to that might have been more useful in being able to prevent or mitigate different factions that came on in that later turned out to be maybe unlawful in some ways. Again, there's policies that cover that under 1110.15 and 1110.18 under the intelligence threat assessment. There, both Jeremy and Shirley mentioned concerns about that as well as David. And of course, communications, it just seems to kind of be an issue throughout that were poor communication at various points in time, okay, kind of hampered and may have slow response or led to decision-making that may be questionable. And again, that would be under policies 1100-2, 1107-2, and 1109-21 again, what we have. And then of course, David, again, as reiterated earlier, community engagement as the part of it all. And the policy related community engagement would be 1106-15, 1106-18. So those were all the policies listed by the board members who sent in stuff about different issues. And I tried to match up based on the issues. They didn't list the policy. I tried to match up two policies that were relevant to their issues. And again, I tried just to list them all there again, but the most common was the chemical agents ones. And of course, between last meeting and this one and our subcommittee mandate, the chief's response came back to us, which was additional information, which they said they are already looking at immediate, intermediate, and long-term reviews of different policies and procedures, some of which they said they've already done, some that are in the works, some that they're creating on in various time frames. And so I guess my recommendation based upon this initial summary is to kind of make another request, maybe formally to the chair make a formal request, say to the city council, to assign the Raleigh Police Advisory Board to the following. For example, to have the city council sign that the Raleigh Police Department is to provide a list and copies of policies that are being reviewed, revised, or created in the immediate, intermediate, and long-term implementation phases of the Raleigh Police response to the 21 CP recommendations following the George Floyd protests. Because that's kind of one of our mandates, we're being more specific here, saying we want to be assigned a specific task that the city council sent us the after action review to look at. Okay, they also sent us the 21 CP to look at. And both of those, and to include the chief's memo, all say various points that there should be what? A citizens advisory input into the creation and formation of policies and revisions and otherwise. So this is kind of according to what they created this for, right up our alley. We're just asking, I'd say that we asked formally that they, hey, based upon those reports, any policies that are being reviewed or revised or created as a result of these reports, that we should be a part of it, and that they should forward it to us in its timely manner, such as obviously send us the immediate ones first, the ones that you've already done, that we can review them, okay, and then the intermediate and the long-term ones, okay, and then changes that have already been made to policy in response to the report or taken self-initiative by Raleigh, okay, they should kind of give us those reports with the policy change so we can kind of give them feedback on whether we feel that they're reasonable policy change to have and give our feedback on them too. And again, as Sheila, we asked earlier, but we asked the city council to provide a liaison specifically to the RPD related to subject matter person on policies, specifically the ones that are involved with this report, that can be there as a resource for us when we're asking about policies and clarification of what it means, what the Raleigh policy intends. That person could tell us that, and that way we'll have an understanding of why they word a certain way, what they interpret it as, and then it'll give us a better way to a platform to provide what our feedback is on any revisions that we feel that policy should have. At the same time, this liaison can carry back our current concerns and our revision suggestions to their ongoing review committees within the police department too. So they already will have a free-flowing idea of what the committee is recommending and looking at over the various policies at the same time that they're revising the policies too, as opposed to writing a policy and then sending it to us and us saying we like it, we don't like it. Why not create the policy with us as a ongoing thing, and by the end of it all, we pretty much know that that it's a reasonable policy, and they take to heart some of our serious recommendations for a more professional and practical policy to be useful. And again, that would be my suggestion, is to make a formal recommendation through Sheila to the City Council requesting items and requesting that the concerns brought up related to policy, that the advisory board be charged as that community entity to work with the Raleigh Police Department on those revisions.
David, you had a question before I go any further. Do you have a question?
I think Genevieve had her hand up before me. No?
No.
Yes, I do. Gerald, I am just wondering, since we are a board appointed by the city council to advise them, how appropriate is it for us to have a specific liaison from the RPD who would, in the chief's mind, should function as a communication link between what we're doing and what's going on with the police department? I think, Sheila, you might ought to check that out before we get too far down that road.
David, well, let me address the board, the whole board. Like I said in my report, I did reach out to the attorney for the Raleigh Police Department for that policy.
Oh, I'm not talking.
And again, I agree with Gerald that I would do another recommendation for the whole city council, because I did also reach out to the mayor concerning our timely, untimely request. So we want a liaison. We want a representative that will answer some questions in our meetings, especially as we going through some of these policies. We want to be a part. That's what this board is about, policy and procedure. What are they doing? What they're not doing? Not just give us things. We want to be interactive so we can better educate our community, explain to our community, making sure that action is done, change is being made in the policy. Like I said, policy is powerful and it does create law. So we have to make sure, and I will, Gerald, if it's agreeable to the board, that I reach out to the whole city council on Gerald's recommendation. Any questions? Genevieve?
Madam Chair, I would move that we adopt as a board Gerald's recommendation and just get the board's consensus on that. So my motion is that we adopt Gerald's recommendation.
Greer?
Yes, just going off of Mr. Bland's point, and Gerald, if you wouldn't mind restating the recommendation, I just want to be clear on the semantics, because I think our job as a board is to be a liaison between, city council, the community, and kind of the police department as well. And so I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly, because I heard the term representative. I don't know if we need another police representative necessarily, but it would be helpful to have a certain policy person. So if you wouldn't mind, Gerald.
I'll just kind of read it back to you here. What I have here is Recommendation actions for the RPD Advisory Board to consider. Chair to formally request City Council to assign the RPD Advisory Board the following. The Raleigh Police Department is to provide a list and copies of policies that are being reviewed, revised, or created in the immediate, intermediate, or long-term implementation process of the Raleigh Police response to 21 CP Solutions recommendation following the George Floyd protest report, December 11, 2020. Changes that have already been made to policies in response to the 21 CP Solutions report or initiated by the Raleigh Police Department and completed after the protest will be provided to the Raleigh Police Advisory Board with changes highlighted in order for the board to provide review and feedback on the changes. Raleigh Police Department is to provide a liaison to the Raleigh Police Advisory Board who has policy subject matter expertise in the policies being reviewed in order to explain current policy intent, interpretation, and proposed revisions to the board. This liaison will also provide RPD, Raleigh Police Department of board members' concerns and input for policies currently being reviewed by the Raleigh Police Department. Raleigh Police Department will request specific policy review and feedback from the Raleigh Police Advisory Board prior to policy approval when changes are made to existing policy or a new policy is created.
And Gerald, will you send that out to the board?
Send it out to the whole board and Pam. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That'd be good. So we have a motion on the floor from Ms. Genevieve Sims to move for the recommendation. Do I hear a second?
I second, Madam Chair.
Jeremy, any questions? All that are in favor for the recommendations that Gerald has put before us and we will get a copy of, let us say aye.
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 Also move. We will have that recommendation, and as it be forward to me, I will do the proper channels and we will move forward on that. So hopefully next meeting, we'll be able to have some results, what we're asking for through the city council and also the policy. We will move to Deontay about the governor's task force and their report.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I sent out right before this meeting email that should have all the attachments from the governor's task force for racial equity and criminal justice. I mentioned this at our previous meeting because I want to say a couple of days before that meeting, a snippet came out from this report that is now included in this report, the full report in regards to decriminalization of marijuana being one of the, I guess, causes or tenets of the plan by Attorney General Josh Stein. Included in the email that I sent are all of the relevant attachments. You'll see executive summary, which is about 15 pages, recommendations chart, which I want to say is about 30, and then the full report is 160. I will say that going through all this, it is still put in a way that is easy to read and has a lot of information that I think will be germane and relevant to any kind of conversation that we will have. I also included the bullet points for the policy recommendations put forth by the task force. And I think there are a couple of subjects that we have already discussed as a group here, to wit, specifically mandating that all Raleigh PD, or they're saying all North Carolina law enforcement, but for us having a duty to intervene in regards to excessive force or other abuse of a suspect or arrestee, and the limitations on any kind of chokeholds or any carotid artery holds and things of that nature. And then one of the other points that we probably need to they need to consider as well is a racial equity training for all of the people, probably all employees of Wake County. So like I said, the policies didn't get released until Monday afternoon. So a little late in the game for us to kind of go through those, but I think there are absolutely some in addition to those specific policy bullet points, that I think we need to latch on to, because I think it's still probably a long road for the recommendations in this report to be made law statewide. So we can do what we can do as a committee here to try to enact any of the policies here. And just while I've got the conch shell, I think Greer brought up some very salient points when hearing him give his just retelling of it. It's very chilling, some of the things that we're dealing with at this point in time. So I think we all need to take those seriously and hopefully act quickly on those things that kind of jump off the page and the reports that we're going through. But I appreciate everyone's work. And that is my report for now. But all of that should be in your email boxes now. If someone did not get those attachments, just let me know and I'll resend them right now.
Okay. Well, what we would do is we'll table this to everyone take a look at. Also, this report is not going to be a rush because it's a long report. So, but we will table this, and once everyone has taken a look at it and we have reviewed it, and we'll bring it back at a later date. Is that okay? I hear a motion that we will table this.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
All in favor of tabling this to a later date?
Aye.
Aye.
So we will table this at a later date. We're gonna move now to new business, which is the work plan. Scadia is gonna discuss a work plan that we talked a little bit about. Scadia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scatia. We are going to talk a little bit about our work plan. And this isn't anything that we have talked very much about before now. We are at the end of the calendar year. And so we're wanting to look forward to next year, but we're at a kind of a weird place because even though we're at the end of the calendar year, we're halfway through the fiscal year, but we still want to make sure that we are putting things on our calendar in terms of action items and things that we are wanting to work towards as a board. And as you can see, our to-do list is already starting to fill up. We've got things that we are already working on. So this work plan will not be a difficult thing for us to do. But we do need to take some time out to come up with a formal list so that we can present it to the city council along with a proposed budget. And we are hoping to be able to do that sometime in February or in time for the city council's February meeting. So the way that this typically works, and I am going to ask that the Office of Equity and Inclusion keep their ears open and jump in if I mess any of this up. But the way that this typically works with all of the other boards is that during the spring, the boards have a retreat where we would all come together. In non-COVID years, we would come together in person and we would have a closed door session where we would hammer out our agenda for the upcoming fiscal year. We would come up with the things that we want to tackle. We would figure out why these things are important, what our action items would look like for the upcoming year, how much though it will cost us to tackle those items, what our proposed budget will look like. And we would put it all on paper, and then we would prepare to present those items to the city council. And that is how we would get funding for the upcoming fiscal year. Since we're not at that point, we are going to prepare to do that for half the year. And so what we would like to propose to you guys is planning a mini retreat. And so instead of doing like a full afternoon, we're thinking about doing just a couple hours, so maybe 2 hours. So along with this mini retreat would be a mini work plan. So we've got a couple of dates in January where we would do 2 hours in the evening. I know that it's short notice, and I really hope that you guys can carve it out. You know, we will carve out an agenda and we will hammer through it as quickly as we can. We will have a rough draft of a work plan ready when we arrive, and it will include the things that we are already working on. We will just need to flesh it out. And so we will be able to get through it pretty quickly. So if you guys are ready, I can go ahead and give you some of those proposed dates, and we can kind of go from there. So there are 3 dates. We've got Tuesday, January 5th from 6 to 8. Wednesday, January 6th from 6 to 8. And we've got Thursday, January 7th from 6 to 8. And what we would like to do is be able to get a work plan together so that we can present at the January 23rd City Council meeting.
Do anyone have a suggestion? David?
Are you going to ask us tonight to give you our preferences?
Madam Chair, what say you on how to proceed with that?
It would be better if we can go ahead and lock a date in, since this is our last meeting for this year. Go ahead and lock a date in now, and that way we can proceed when January come in, that we will have our retreat before our next meeting, and we will have, and I can go before council for our short-term work plan. David?
Then could we just, Scotty, if you could just poll us on each of the dates, and we'd hold up our hands for the dates that we like the best?
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's start with Tuesday, January 5th from 6 to 8. If you could raise your hand if that date works for you. Or better yet, raise your hand if that date does not work for you.
Oh.
That would be easier. Genevieve, Deontay. So we've got 2 people that date does not work for. Okay. What about Wednesday from 6 to 8, the very next day?
Okay.
So David. So we've got 1 person that Wednesday does not work for. 1 more. What about Thursday?
Jeremy.
Jeremy. Okay.
I can move it. I'll figure it out. Thursday should work.
Are you sure?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sean, you just came on. Does Thursday work for you? You're muted, so can you nod or shake your head for me?
Sean. Sean. He is muted.
There
Oh,
you
there he
go.
goes.
I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Sean, does Thursday work for you?
Yes, that's fine for me.
Okay, perfect. So Thursday, January 7th from 6 to 8. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much.
And Scottia, when did you say that we would be presenting our work before council? That January meeting? Is that correct?
January 23rd.
Okay. The 23rd is a Saturday, unless I'm looking at my
Oh,
calendar wrong.
27. You're not looking at it wrong. We had some date mix-ups in our emails, and I'm looking at the wrong email now. So it's that 27, the Tuesday after that 23rd. I don't have a
Got
calendar
It's
pulled
the
up. Hold on.
27th.
27. Thank you, David.
Good eye, Greer.
Thank you. I don't know. I didn't know if they were having a Saturday assembly or what.
I don't think so. I don't think they would be happy with having to do all of that on a Saturday. Oh, Demetrius, you're muted. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I was trying to raise my hand real quick. Just a point of clarification on the 27th. I believe January 27th is the next board meeting. And so the idea was to have the work plan together and finalized for the next board meeting for the 27th, so that we can be prepared for the
February
go before council in February.
Council meeting. Okay.
Sorry for the mix up. We was going back and forth.
That's
I
what it
apologize
was.
for the mix up.
Gotcha. So our board meeting for January is the 27th, our general board meeting.
Meet on the
Yes.
Wednesday, the 28th.
We're all confused. Okay, so we are going to meet for our mini retreat on January 7th from 6 to 8.
Right.
We will complete our mini work plan on that day so that we can have it ready by our January meeting, which will be on January 27th.
Yes,
We
I'm
can
sorry, I
vote
was
on.
looking at July.
Oh, you're fine. It's not you. It was all me. So we will be able to vote on it in on our January 27th meeting, so that we will be ready to present it by the February City Council meeting. And I think that's all correct.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
That is
Thank
correct.
you. Okay, Madam Chair, that is all I have.
Gerald.
Unless Gerald has a question for me.
I just had a question. Is there anything we need to have in preparation for the January 7th meeting prior to?
There is not.
Greer.
I know we are supposed to have or at least the summary that Deontay shared with us all from the Racial Equity Task Force on behalf of the governor read by then would be helpful, but were there any specific action items that we were going to take with that report, or maybe with some of those policies that Deontay bulleted, excuse me?
Deontay.
I would love for us to go ahead and in preparation for your meeting with town council, have some actual policies that we would like to see in place. And I think some of the things that we've discussed multiple times here, like the chokeholds, no knock warrants, actually putting that on the record are, I think, things that we could come to a consensus and agree upon pretty quickly, and actually show that we are taking some action and forcing the town council to take some action on. So if we could adopt those, that would be great.
Any more questions? Scotty, are you finished?
I am, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go Greer. Oh, Jeremy, I'm sorry. Wait a minute, Greer.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yes, Madam Chair. I just had a question. Greer presented earlier about the idea of reaching out to other metropolis and asking about how they deal with their policies. Do we need permission from the board to do that? Or, yeah, that's my question. How do we go about doing that?
That will be something that the committees, one of the committee member would have to do to reach out. If that's something that you all want to look at far as Charlotte's and what they're doing, you can email all three of us, matter of fact, all four of us, and one of us will pick it up and check into it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Greer?
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to clarify two things real quick. First of all, I'm not sure if Charlotte even has a police advisory board. I was just stating that whatever process they use to remove the necessity of using tear gas on crowds should be examined. I do know that Durham has a police advisory board and that they have either a police liaison and a specific attorney from the police department that they use for their board, which is kind of what we were alluding to earlier. But to Gerald's point earlier, speaking to Deontay's point about what we should have in preparation for January regarding the task force, 100-page document. I also just, as a point of caution, was just looking up, and I sent the link in the chat, but it could have gotten buried. If you type Raleigh police policies into Google, the website with all of the policies that they do have online pops up. And so I want us to be very careful when we recommend policies like the no knock, or when we, discuss policies, and Sheila knows this, I'm sure, better than I do, such as the duty to intervene, because you'll get a lot of, or we will get a lot of, we already have that on the books, but it may not be the language that we're looking for. So I just think as a point of order, before we recommend a policy, that somebody on some committee goes and makes sure that that specific language is not already online. Again, most of it lies in the accountability and the consequence. If the officers violate this policy, what is their consequence? Which is my, main point of concern. And, Gerald, your point is well taken. They can't discuss personnel and, what types of discipline goes on to a certain extent, which is why the Raleigh City Council has asked the General Assembly to give us certain powers, such as subpoena powers and other powers in the new year. But that's getting away from the point. I just want us to make sure that we don't get caught by the police department with policies that we recommend saying we already have that, because many of the policies that we've discussed as a board, they don't have, or they don't have it in the language that we like. So I just don't want to get caught in these technicalities as we review these many pages of memos and suggestions from these outside groups.
Well taken, and well understood. That's why we have a committee, and Gerald is on the committee, so we can actually look at, before we make any recommendations and requests from Raleigh PD to help us to make sure the language is what we're looking for and a policy is correct. So we're going to move forward because we're about running out of time. So we're going to go to some old business. And I think one of the old business, before we get to community engagement, and if there's any questions from the community that's watching us, is the bylaws. Are we going to discuss or review the bylaws again? Pam?
Well, I did one of the bylaws, or one portion of the bylaws, I think that you all do need to review, and I sent you guys the bylaws, so that is up to you, Madam Chair, if you think that the board needs to look at those again. But it is around the issue of when there is a board member that has decided to not continue, that is the responsibility and the role of the city clerk to then contact that person prior to see it, to inquire about their intentions. So that's one of the major things. So I guess that would be your decision.
Okay, so that's the only change. Do we need to go back and revisit any more changes to the bylaws, Pam?
Well, I think that it is important to review, just so that that you are clear and everyone is in agreement.
Do anyone, David? You're mute, David. You're mute.
Are you saying that our item C needs to be reworded because it doesn't include the clerk?
Pam?
Okay, so give me a second and I will pull that up. Just give me a moment. And I sent that to you, Sheila, Stacy, and Scotia.
And I believe we all got an email today from Scotia with the edited bylaws. So you should be able to pull that up around 3 o'clock from Scotia, easiest.
And while y'all looking up that, me looking at something else, Charlotte does have a police review board. I just want to clarify that. So we're getting back to the bylaws. Ms. Sims? Ms. Genevieve?
Having not had an opportunity to review any emails which came in this afternoon, I would ask that we defer this until the next meeting. Allow everyone a chance to review whatever has been sent.
Those in favor for us to review this at next meeting?
Agreed.
We will table that to the next meeting. Thank you, Ms. Genevieve. Greer?
I'm sorry, one more thing. I was just looking at the Charlotte article as well, if folks want to do their own research. Following the summer protests, Charlotte also rewrote their police policies to discontinue no-knock warrants, which was alluded to by Deontay as part of the North Carolina racial equity recommendation. And so Charlotte may be a good resource for us as we just look at their process for tear gas and no-knock warrants and policies like that.
And what we'll do with that, the committee that handles those policies, Gerald, myself, and Deontay and Stacy, we will get together, we will talk, you know, and see which one of us is gonna, and it'll probably be me, calling, just checking and some information with that board, you know, kind of get a introduction to us as well. That's what's going on in Raleigh and what they're doing as well. We're going to public comments. Do we have any public comments or any public questions?
No, Madam Chair, we had not received prior notice for any public comments.
Okay, anyone else have anything they want to add to this meeting before we adjourn?
Madam Chair, is this the public comment from Kimberly Mukhtarian? Miss Pam?
Yeah.
have you seen it?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe she's a member of the public.
Okay, Jeremy, can you read that for me? Because I haven't looked at it, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. She just said that to the panelists. Please know that RPD was well aware that the city was under threat by outside infiltrators or disruptors. Advocate and State Racial Equity Board member Kerwin Pittman was notified by Liaison Michael Ballin earlier that morning. Not sure why adequate coverage was not provided. Also, please find out for public safety issues whether the officer who stated that he enjoyed running down protesters is still an employee of RPD and when they were released. I am in great hopes that you will look deeper into the practices and actions of RPD that go beyond these open protests. As a citizen and advocate, we will formally respond in writing to the city's report. Again, thank you for your efforts to bring transparency.
Well stated.
Pardon me, David?
It was well stated.
And I think in my analysis, I stated the same thing differently, but the same way that they were probably informed. I think if you go back to what I had written, they had to know. So we will revisit some of those things. Thank you, Kim, for your comment. David, you have a question?
Yeah, Gerald, is that Kerwin Pittman a part of the RPD?
I'm not entirely sure.
Kerwin Pittman is actually an activist that's on the task force for the governor's task force.
I see, thank you.
Greer?
Well, who is Michael?
Michael Ballard is the community
is.
outreach liaison.
Well,
He
then
works
they
for
did
RPD.
know about it.
Exactly. I think that's very concerning. And if we want to make a note of that in our communications with the RPD, that's exactly what I was going to say. Because I believe one of the 21 CP, excuse me, bullets was that they could have better responded to these outside infiltrators and disruptors. So it'd be interesting.
Right.
I don't know if that was what you were going to say, Mr. Bland, to know what they did to prepare, since Ms. Kimberly is saying that activists and the Raleigh Police Department themselves knew that this was a possibility.
And
Well-
what we can do is what Gerald has sent us, we can also, before I actually do a recommendation, before I do a request, we all look at what Gerald sent of the recommendations, and we can add as well to that recommendation. So we'll look into that as well. Anyone else have any more thoughts, concerns, questions? Well, if anyone do not have anything else tonight, thank you all. Y'all have a happy, happy holiday. And I am going to say, I want a motion, listen. Can I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting? Okay, y'all have a happy holiday and a happy new year, and we'll come back and take up. Gerald, I will, and for the record, I will start looking at that recommendation and get with the team before the new year come in, and send out a couple of emails if that's okay with the team. Okay, y'all have a great holiday and have a good night. Be safe. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.